Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. Welcome to Knife AQ number 74, knife series where I answer all your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. This week, we're going to be breaking down the different types of Tanto blade shapes, talking about finger choils, whether they're worth it or not, and we'll figure out exactly what this thing right here is good for in a little bit. Let's get right into it. All right, before we drop into the first question right here, if you're new to this series, the deal is we're going to pull questions from our comments section here on YouTube and pick some good ones to feature in this series. So if you want a chance to have your question featured in a future episode, the comments section, as always, is right below this video. Just drop it down there and maybe it'll get picked. First question this week comes from Robert Kalnitz. Love the Knife AQ. Thank you, sir. My question is, all things being equal, why not a finger choil on every folder? Seems to add versatility and other benefits without any costs. Elucidate me on the pros and cons. Thanks. Excellent use of the word elucidate there, my friend. So sure, yeah, let's get into it. When you're talking about a choil or any design decision really, and especially when you talk about design decisions and choils on folders, as with anything, every single thing is an exercise in compromises. So yeah, you do get some benefits from something like a choil. On this knife right here, this is the mini cut jack from Steel Will, comes in about $47.50. You have a finger choil there. So the handle itself is kind of a 3.5 finger grip right there, at least for me with my slightly larger than average hands. If you add something like a choil, you can choke up on it and get a fuller grip on the knife. You can see this real famously on some even smaller knives than this, like the Spyderco Dragonfly is a great example of something that folds up really small in the pocket while giving you a full 4-finger grip. The negatives or the drawbacks, I would say, especially as you get into folders that are larger than the Dragonfly or even larger than this cut jack, is the space taken up by that choil has to come from somewhere. And in the case of this cut jack, it's coming at the expense of more sharpened edge. You could have more sharp edge on this knife if it had a choil more similar to the Modus from Steel Will, or the mini Modus right here. Not a full-sized finger choil, just has more of a traditional sharpening choil there. And even though, well, you compare the edges, even though linearly, because the amount of belly on the cut jack, you've got more edge, you've got more sharpened length measured in a straight line on the Modus without that finger choil. And at the same time, you've got a smaller handle. So you've got more edge and a more compact package overall with the mini Modus versus the cut jack. So that is one potential pro and con. One is neither more wrong or right than the other. It's just, what is your priority? What do you prize in what you're carrying? And that's going to guide your things. But some people are going to prefer this, so that's a great reason why not all folders should have finger choils. Another possible drawback is everybody's hand is a different size, and the actual radius of this choil right here can be good or bad depending on that. I don't have skinny fingers myself. When I choke up on this cut jack, I am touching the back edge of the actual sharpened edge itself with my finger. And it's just there, and it's so much so that I genuinely wouldn't want to use this finger choil in a full choked up grip. It's not for me. I could still get in there with a fingertip for some precision stuff, but honestly, I don't really feel much less precision with just using a pinch grip on this mini Modus. So, you know, if you have bigger fingers or if the choil's just too small for your fingers, wouldn't you rather have more sharpened edge in that case? I know I would. Another way to get around that, kind of another compromise, check out this Sandrin Torino right here. It has a full-sized finger choil, and you don't have to worry about the edge itself touching your finger because you've got another little, or a non-sharpened section here. The sharpened edge starts a little further forward, and in fact, it's got a little sharpening choil on the end here. And you know, there's certainly an argument to be made that if the finger choil doesn't actually intersect the edge, like it does on that Steel Will, maybe it shouldn't be called a finger choil at that point. I'm not going to get into that debate right now. But with this, you don't have to worry about it. But again, I talked about compromises, right? In order to get that safety, you're taking up even more away from the sharpened or the potential sharpened edge on a knife. What do you want? Basically, what is your preferences? And if that works for you, great. But saying blanket, what's the benefits of not just doing it to everywhere? You're taking little things away to get that added degree of grip length and that added degree of kind of precision adjustability or precision stuff.
Words.
Man, I was doing so good right up here till that last word, but you know what I mean. Yeah, you're going to get some benefits from a finger choil at the cost of more sharpened edge is the primary thing. So what do you need and what do you want?
Some people need a minivan, some people need a pickup truck.
It's true. And yeah, I was going to make a joke about Thomas's inexpensive pickup truck. Here's a fun game. If we added up the sell price on all of these knives on the table, would it equal more than your pickup truck?
I'll just put it in post.
We'll have a graphic coming up like do 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 do, ching ching, something like that. So thanks for your question. Yeah, finger choils are cool, but they're not always for everyone, for the reasons discussed. Next question comes from William K. Question, do you know of any $60 to $150 Japanese style Tantos, preferably tactical fixed blade? Also, do you know any benefits of a Kwaiken blade style over a Japanese style Tanto? Sure. So one thing you didn't mention, which I'll get into just for folks who may not be familiar with what a Japanese style Tanto is I'll talk about the American or the Western style Tanto as a baseline, because I think more people in this country here in the US actually are more familiar with that. And you have something like this, the Cold Steel Kobun lightweight boot knife, $58 for this guy. And it has the stereotypical Western style Tanto. And I say stereotypical with this Cold Steel very intentionally, because Cold Steel was kind of the company that popularized this blade style here in the States. You've got a very abrupt change in angle out here near the tip, and typically you will have a hollow ground main section and the tip itself will be flat ground for a little more durability there. Very useful. You can get some chisel-y uses out of a tip like this. Very effective and very popular these days. An example, or a good recent example of a more Japanese style Tanto is this Bob Trezzola design, the Civivi Tamashi, $66.50 for this guy. As you can see, very different. And in fact, some Japanese style Tantos may not have quite this gentle of a belly. They might have a more kind of stout or more abrupt tip, but you're typically not going to see that abrupt change in angle or the compound grinds on a Japanese style Tanto. So yeah, here's a good example of that. You get a little bit more of a kind of a natural curve to the blade, and it's a little bit closer to, think of like the samurai swords, the katanas. You don't see them with compound grinds like that Cold Steel. It's usually a more continuous thing. Even if the tip is kind of abrupt and kind of like chopped off looking, it's still going to have a more gentle thing going on. This is a really cool knife. You were asking about in this price range. I mean, it's right under that. It's very affordable, just over a 4-inch blade, D2 steel. Not too bulky, so it's easy to kind of keep close to your body if you're carrying it that way, but it's still very comfortable. No tang sticking out. This is 2 pieces of G10 mated over top the tang pretty seamlessly. Really cool. Kwaiken style fixed blades. I actually have a folder here, but this is the CRKT Hisatsu folder, but there is a larger fixed blade version of this knife. When we get into kind of the original old school differences between like a Tanto, a Kwaiken, and that sort of thing, I actually don't have like the best number one understanding firsthand, but the way we talk about Kwaikens today is they're going to be a little pointier, typically. Maybe I should have had one of the Boker Kwaikens from Lucas Burnley. His pattern, I think, really skyrocketed the popularity of this blade shape. But compared to the Civivi right here, you've got a more acute tip and a longer, more gentle belly going on. Hisatsu's a really cool knife, though, by the way. Yeah, You may or may not see some kind of compound grind lines going on. It's funny, you do see that delineation. You do have a kind of very slightly defined point. A lot of Kwaikens won't have that, but both of these sections are flat ground. You don't have a hollow ground section here at the back. It's about $64 for this guy too. What's the fixed blade version of this? It's like a 7-inch blade, really big. Comes in at like $80, so still quite affordable and in your range. Now I say, since I'm talking about these from like the way we talk about knives now in like the modern context, there's always something that's going to break the rules. There's always something that's going to kind of bend the lines of is it a Tanto? Is it this type of Tanto? Is it a Kwaiken? Hence the ease of confusion out there. But hopefully that gives a little bit of at least broad strokes of how, like the pillars of how these knives are typically classified or thought of nowadays. Hope that helps. I genuinely hope that helps. Next question comes from Egypt Salaktu. Nice name. He says, I have modded an Opinel number 10, making it a Tanto. Milling the so, yeah, Japanese style, American style, probably Japanese style. Opinel blades are so thin, I don't think he could go in and hollow grind the back section without losing too much. I've modified an Opinel number 10 by making it a Tanto, milling the handle to have a seatbelt cutter, and thinning the handle. And while it's slicey, I'm not satisfied with the handling or edge retention. I think I need a thin, high, full flat grind, 3.5 inches to preferably 4 inches, if possible D2 or more in edge retention. Budget $70 max, give or take. All right, sure thing. I'm going to take a little more from your $70. I'm going to show you a knife here that's about $95. And the reason I'm not trying to find you something else is what you're asking for and describing between the way you've modded your Opinel and this. There's one knife that I think fits so perfectly that it's not even worth talking about other options, and that is the SOG Trident AT knife. Like I said, $95. 3.7-inch blade, D2 as requested. Not a full flat grind, but a high flat grind nonetheless, and thin enough blade stock. This is going to be quite slicey. Nothing's going to ever be as slicey as an Opinel, quite honestly. It's got some of the pure laser beam sliciness of any production folder out there. So you will kind of give up a little bit ultimately to that, but you're going to have more rigidity and more strength in this D2 blade. High flat grind, slice is great. Assisted opening, so if that's not your thing, that may be the one drawback of this, but you are going to get nice, consistent, and repeatable action every time. And you've got a slot, just like you did in your Opinel, cut out of the handle so you can use this as a strap cutter. Close the blade up. You can see the edge itself is exposed right there. As long as the slot is wide enough that it's not going to prevent you from kind of getting into what you're cutting, shouldn't have much of an issue cutting through a seatbelt strap right there. And you got a glass breaker here at the tip as well for breaking glass. Safety switch there, so if you want to lock that blade down into the closed position, it's not going to go anywhere. And I forget, yeah, I know you can't use it in the open position either, but very little chance of this coming unlocked, I'd say. But then to unlock the knife, you've got that crossbar lock there. Very easy to operate one-handed, very easy to close one-handed, even though it is assisted. No problems there. This is all I could think about when you were describing what you needed. This is definitely the way to go. At least I think so. All right, next question comes from Eduardo Contreras. Hey DCA, I'm looking for a pocket knife that already has a deep pocket clip. I'm not looking for a deep pocket clip to buy. I want the knife that already has a deep pocket clip so that the knife is hidden in the pocket. Which knives are truly deep in the pocket? Deep pocket clips are cool. They keep things, very subtle. Tons of companies make knives with deep carry pocket clips these days. Civivi does a lot. Benchmade has some knives with it. SOG has several knives with deep carry pocket clips. But if we're going for like the deepest, most concealable, that's what I focus this on, because otherwise we could fill this table up with unique knives, all with deep carry pocket clips, and then you wouldn't even be able to see them all in camera. Not all deep carry pocket clips are created equal, especially when we have elements that stick up higher than that folded over clip sits. I'll show you one of my oldest, favoritist deep carry, forget deep carry, one of my favorite clips ever of all time is what you see on the Buck Vantage right here. This is the Vantage Avid Large. It's like a $65 knife made in the USA. And the clip itself is screwed in from the tail side of the knife, rather than screwing into the side of the handle like you see on this particular SOG, like you see on pretty much every other knife out there, even knives with deep carry pocket clips. Actually, this Sandrin has a pretty deep carry pocket clip right there, but even that, there's a little bit sticking out above. But if we're really talking hidden away, stuff like this Buck right here, that's kind of like the starting point. It works great, sits really subtly. You do see the top of the tool, but it's such a subtle, such an elegant execution of a clip like this. It can be ambidextrous without having to screw extra sets of holes. That saves time and money when building the knife. It saves the aesthetics of whichever side you don't have the clip on. You don't have extra holes poking out, and you don't have to worry about a plate to like cover those holes if you wanted to clean it up that way. Really nice. Love that execution. There are deeper clips than that though. ZT has several that, you know, we talk about mounting location rather than mounting into the side, like on that steel will, or the tail like that Buck. They have several clips that actually mount from the inside of the handle, like on this 5.62. You can see the clip there. You do have the screw from the side, but it wraps around the tail and tucks back inside the handle. So it's not super, super deep, but you can see the top of the clip truly is past the end of the handle rather than even being flush with it, like on that Buck. 5.62 is a great example. The new 707 has a very subtle clip. You do have the tail kind of coming up right to the top there, but this is another knife with the clip mounted from the inside. And with such a very subtle, small clip on the outside, it goes even further towards making that knife just be seamless and disappear when you don't want it to be seen. In a very elegant shape overall. And you may want a locking knife, but if you can do with a non-locker, I always forget the number of this one, the 235. Same style of clip as the 707, but even deeper. Look how far out that comes from the back. However, the most deepest, carriest knives you can get these days are hands down Actinon Verba. This is their Z300. It's about $105, and it has a wire pocket clip, which already goes another step further in making things seem very subtle from the outside. And just look how far out that pocket clip sticks out of the back. I mean, with this type of thing, with just subtle narrow clips, and especially on this knife with a tapering tail towards the back, slip that into the pocket, that is going to be like unnoticed by anyone except those of us knife people with a keen eye that are going to go, huh, check out that cool thing. They're cool knives, they're built really well, and pretty much their entire lineup is rocking this style of clip. If you're not sure, you'll be able to see those in the photos on our website. All right, now we come to the lightning round for today. First questions from Michael Blanco. In the second to last question last week, someone asked, should I be afraid of that Spyderco closing things where people flick the blade towards their fingers? And I answered it thinking he was talking about a compression lock, but several of you pointed this particular thing out. Says, I think he was referring to the way people like Eric Glesser, Spyderco's second in command, close lockbacks one-handed by pressing the lock and letting the ricasso fall onto the finger. Yes, I didn't address that. You can see it on our exclusive Delica right here. What you do, since there's this unsharpened ricasso back here, sometimes they may even have a finger choil in that area. Rock your finger up as close to the end of the handle as it'll go to press the lock back. You flick the blade towards your finger, and since there's no sharpened edge there, your finger catches it, and then you can finish it. Should you be afraid of it? Maybe. This is definitely not something I recommend because what you mentioned Eric Glesser a few years ago in a SHOT Show interview with him. He got into trouble with this because if you build up a muscle memory of doing this with lockbacks and you get to a knife that doesn't have this type of feature, such as the Spyderco Siren, when Eric was showing that video or showing that knife to us during our interview, he did that thing. He hit the lock, slipped it closed, and the edge bit him right there. Live on camera, even though it wasn't live.
When you need it, a back lock is tough to beat.
Yeah.
When this thing comes open, it opens.
It's ready to go.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
Yep.
First spider bite of the day.
So this one, it's funny, I just did that. When all...
So that's a perfect example of why it could be a bad habit to get into closing it that way. So I don't recommend it, even though I've done it. There we go. So should that guy have been afraid of that sort of thing? Maybe a healthy respect would be appropriate.
Helps to know your knife.
Know your tools. Actually, that perfectly leads us into the next question, and Thomas didn't even know it. FC's the Meme asked, which knife would you recommend for a mountain lion attack? I encounter a lot of them and need something else to use if my pistol misfeeds around in the chamber. It took me I went round and round on this question a little bit. I thought maybe this would be a most serious question of the day candidate for the end of the videos, but you may be serious. This could be a very serious thing. I can't recommend you anything in particular, and here's why. As Thomas just mentioned, you got to know your tools. Carry something if you're any kind of self-defense situation, whether it's animal, vegetable, or mineral. You got to know what your gear is capable of, and you have to be you just got to know it in and out. For me, maybe something like the Benchmade Griptilian or something with an axis lock. I'm so familiar with this knife and this type of lock. It's very easy for me to pull the knife out, have it ready to go, but that might not be the same for you. You know your limits. Take that under advisement when you're picking your gear. Because, nobody designs a knife for mountain lion self-defense that I know of. Maybe someone does out there, but for that reason, I can't, in good conscience, really make a solid recommendation here, except for use that information for guidance.
Maybe if he's worried about jams, consider a revolver.
There's a possibility right there. I can't remember now. There was a guy who went viral a year or two ago for surviving a cougar attack with a pocket knife. Did he have like a mini Griptilian or something? He might have had a Benchmade.
We'll fact check this later.
I can't remember. And I looked for like 2 seconds before we started filming and I couldn't find it. But if someone in the comments, you may know before we ever get to it, so let us know. Which brings us now to the most serious question of the day, which comes from Jeremy 2. What are some folding knives that would be good for stabbing through doors to make a hole to escape from an indoor bedroom of a house? Just in case someone tried to lock anybody in a burning house. This is a bit of a roller coaster of a question here. The reason I put this on a most serious question of the day thing is, how is somebody locking you in a bedroom? Like, don't locks usually lock from the inside of things?
I'm not an architect.
Unless they're putting like padlocks on the outside, in which case you got bigger issues. But I know Jeremy too here oftentimes drops a lot of like funny questions in a row. So I'm going to take this from a humorous perspective here. You don't want a folder. Folder's the wrong way to go. You need a wrecking bar. Something like a true sharpened pry bar, like the Becker BK3 right here. It's a 1/4-inch chunk of sharp steel. It's barely a knife, but it will smash. And that's what you want. It will pry. That's what you want. But if you're kind of stocking a room for, this type of eventuality, maybe a real breaching tool. Ugh. Like the Gerber Ding Dong, one of my favorite product names of all time. One, because it's funny, and two, because it actually is appropriate for a breaching tool like this. Man, I'm just gonna admire this. You know what I should have done? I didn't show the carcass splitter. I haven't shown that in a while. That would be a great choice as well. Because that thing's smashy Eggman too. Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks, or at least all the questions I've pulled together for this video. Again, if you want a chance to have one of your questions featured in the future, drop them in the comments section below. If you want to get your hands on any of these knives, we'll have links in the description. Those will take you to KnifeCenter.com. And make sure you're signed up for our Knife Rewards program while you're there. If you're already signed up for our newsletter, you're good to go. Because if you're going to spend some money on one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Henderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas over there. We'll see you next time.